Hello, I'm Troy Shaw, and welcome to Focus on Diversity. This week we have a very special guest. It's Minister Akbar Muhammad, and he is the international representative of the Nation of Islam. Welcome, and thank you for being on the program.
Thank you very much for having us, my brother.
My great pleasure, my great pleasure. Now, let's take a look currently where the Nation of Islam is right now. There's a lot of international goings on right now with the Nation of Islam. We're looking at Darfur, we're looking at Sudan. In particularly, Sudan and Darfur, where does the Nation of Islam stand with the current conflicts that are happening in those two countries?
It's interesting. Just 2 weeks ago, I came back from the Sudan, and I've been going to the Sudan since 1977. Mm-hmm. So I know quite a bit about the country, probably more so than the average black American. Mm-hmm. Sudan is the largest country in all of Africa land-wise, even though it only has between 28 and 30 million people. Mm-hmm. Right below the Sudan is the country of the DRC, formerly known as Zaire. 3.5 million people in the last 4 years have died in Zaire. 3.5 million in the eastern part of that country.
And why do you think that we are keying on Darfur when we're not keying on that country?
Because of the oil, the uranium, possibility gold, and the water under the desert floor, and the fact that they want a regime change in Khartoum. And in order to effectuate this regime change and try to get the world to look down on the people who rule the Sudan, then Darfur becomes an issue. Look,
I mean, Mr. Akbar, I got to ask you this question real, because what you're literally saying here is that all those natural resources are the reason why we're keen on Darfur. You're saying that the people aren't important. It's the natural resources in the United States, the western part of the United States, if you will. They recognize that fact, and they're saying that let's key on Darfur. This is really, we only really care about the natural resources, and we know what's going on, so let's key on.
In reality, you're right, because if we were concerned about people, we're concerned about one death in Darfur. We know that there's a human tragedy going on there, it's no doubt. People are dying, people are being killed. But if I asked you, Brother Troy, right now, what do you know about, what is the root of the problem in Darfur? What is the root according to what you understand in the press? How would you answer that question?
The only thing I would be able to answer, able to answer it intelligently, I would be able to, that there's mass killings going on, that there's mass graves, that there are people there are women and children being shot for no reason whatsoever.
Okay, see, this is the understanding that is conveyed in the press. First, you have to say, how did this thing start? The difference between the Arab tribes and the African tribes. First, you have to know that they're all Muslims, 100% in Darfur. Everybody's a Muslim. Then you have to know the difference between why this man, all of them are my color, even the Arabs, okay? Why is this man called an African and he's called an Arab? One of them speaks an African dialect and Arabic, which is his national language, and the other one only speaks Arab. One of them is a herder, tremendous herds of cattle and camels and sheeps and so forth. And the other is a farmer. So for the last 500 years, there's always been problems between the herders and the farmers, because when the dry season comes to the northern part of Darfur, the cattle, and they go down to the southern part, and they eat some of the crops of the farmers. And so they've always had these little skirmishes. But the reality of what the people in America don't know, that there was a rebel movement that started in February 2003 and attacked the government posts. The government had just finished the war in the South. They say, well, did the government arm these Arabs? The way that the American people, and it bothers me because I'm knowledgeable about it. I've been to Darfur. I've sat in the meetings, we talked about it. I went to the refugee camps. And what bothers me is that the people think that one day these tribesmen just woke up one morning and start slaughtering and killing people. And for no reason other than they were black Africans and these were Arabs.
Is the United States backing efforts to keep Darfur unstabilized?
No, not to keep it unstable. I won't say to keep it unstabilized, but the United States had this rebel group who started the conflict. The United States is in bed with them.
That's saying the same thing, just indirectly.
And so
that's saying the exact same thing, just indirectly.
See, and also the United States is worried about China, that has just moved into Africa. China is helping them to bring the oil out of the Sudan. America is concerned about that. And let me say clearly why. The Bush administration has created a mess in the Middle East. It's difficult for them now to get oil freely out of the Middle East without the problem that the Middle East has created by the government of the United States. So the next target is the continent of Africa, because Africa is awash in oil. One of the places that got good oil is the Sudan. One of the places where the oil, they know it's there, but they haven't been utilizing it, is Darfur. And being that the Sudan has oil in the south, oil in the west, oil in the east, they want the Sudan as a supply of oil, because we don't know what's going to happen out of this mess that we've made in the Middle East. And so therefore they want to get that country, and you have to break it up and create a conflict in order to get it.
Now you made references to the president, and I'm about to start some questions towards the president. President George Bush, I believe right now, and I'll say that, yeah, right now the Middle East is a mess. The Middle East is indeed a mess. Now, I'll also say in the beginning of all of this, because many people may know it, that I was in support of the president and his efforts to make sure the security of the United States was solved, specifically in 9/11. And of course, we all know the stories about where there weren't any weapons of mass destruction, this, that, what have you. When I say President Bush right now, I mean, what comes to your mind?
What comes to my mind?
Yes.
What comes to my mind?
And you got to laugh a little bit, I see.
I have to laugh.
You got to laugh a little bit.
I have to laugh, because when he came into office, he was not the most sophisticated president.
You don't think he's stupid, do you?
Of course he's not stupid. He's the president of the United States.
Okay.
I wouldn't call
him stupid. But you said the man wasn't sophisticated.
He wasn't sophisticated.
We know what that means.
In international politics, he was not sophisticated.
Okay.
But he had a person around him who was very well sophisticated.
You're referring to Dick Cheney?
No, Condoleezza Rice.
Oh, Condoleezza Rice. Yeah. The smart one was Condoleezza Rice.
She was the smart one, yeah.
Okay.
Dick Cheney was, he's a capitalist. He's after money. And all you have to do is look at his background. And even though they said that he was running things, there's a group called the neocons who set up an agenda. And one of the agendas that they set up is the control of the world, and especially the oil-rich areas of the world, because America is an oil junkie. It depends on oil to turn everything. We are the largest consumer of the energy supplies of the world, in the world, America. China is right behind us right now. So therefore, you got to control those areas. And they said that after 9/11, of the 19 hijackers, if in reality they were the ones, 15 of them was Saudi Arabia. Wait a minute, let me just finish this.
Go ahead, please do.
15 was Saudi Arabia, and America was mad.
Okay.
But Saudi Arabia was our #1 oil supply. So the neocons in the Bush administration said, well, if we can kick the Saudis to the curb, we'd have to have an oil supply. Where's the next biggest one? Iraq. Why don't we take Iraq? What can we do to get in there and take it? Because if you notice, when they bombed Baghdad, the oil ministry was not touched with not one bomb. That building, that I've been in it many times, it was sitting there intact. So they thought it would be a cakewalk. They'd knock Iraq off, get rid of Saddam Hussein, accuse him of weapons of mass destruction. He threatened the world. I guess if he had the weapons of mass destruction, he was going to use a slingshot, or he was going to make them into a spitball and throw them at us, because he didn't have an air force.
I'm just going to say this, because I hear the argument, and it's a good faith argument.
It's a solid argument.
There was no weapons of mass destruction. We still can't find them, y'all. So, but here's the question. Here's the reason. We live in a very dangerous world. You can admit that. Am I correct? Can you admit that we live in a very...
Who created it as a dangerous world?
Okay, who created it? There's some argument they'd be there, but we live in a very dangerous world, you can say that. And this world is about control of natural resources. The one reason why you're paying maybe $1.65 or $2 a gallon of gas, or $2.50 a gallon of gas, is because we do some of these kinds of things. You would be paying probably about maybe $5 a gallon of gas if we didn't do it. Isn't that what we do? I mean,
I disagree with you.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm just putting it out there.
We would pay less for gas if Bush hadn't created that
mess
in Iraq.
Oh, you believe that?
We would be paying less.
You believe that we'd be paying less?
We would be paying less.
Okay.
The oil prices went up because of supply and demand, and when you disrupt the supply and the demand increases, then prices increase. That's the nature of capitalism. So therefore, he created a mess in the Middle East.
But he was trying to take Kuwait.
No,
he was trying to take Kuwait. He was on the verge of taking Iraq. Who knows what Saddam would have taken after that?
No. Well,
I mean, that's the argument. And in control of 1/3 of the world's
Brother Troy,
oil.
The argument for going into Iraq was very clear. that this man had gotten in bed with Al-Qaeda, the terrorists, and this man had weapons of mass destruction. This is what we said to the world. We said it at the State of the Union address. Colin Powell went before the UN and spun this fantastic tale, and to justify going into Iraq. We have young soldiers over there raping their women, and those that we know about and those that we have not heard about. We have our soldiers who are frightened to death about the insurgents now. They went from terrorists and Al-Qaeda, now they're insurgents. We have a civil war going on that we can't stop. It has spun out of control. And so all of this was to control the oil resources, but they had to justify it.
In your mind, it wasn't worth it.
It wasn't. The world is saying it's not worth it. Everybody is saying it. The only ones are the diehards who are trying to hang in there with Bush. And the thing that he has to do is humble himself. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about, confessing your faults, okay? You got to go to God and humble yourself. I made a mistake. I asked your forgiveness to the families in America who has lost loved ones, husbands who come home with one arm and no leg, half of their face blown off. You got to go to God and say, God, I have done this. Forgive me, and what can I do to right this wrong? And so it's almost like we lost in Vietnam. After 58,000 young men died in that conflict, then we had to run out of there. Are we going to repeat history in Iraq?
What do you think will be the legacy of President George Bush?
George Bush has almost 2 years in office left. He can turn it around by going in front of the American people and bringing our children home, bringing our young boys home and say that we have made a mistake. Now let these people in this part of the world determine what kind of government they want to run their society. Why should we be the policemen to the entire world?
Thank you, Minister Akbar Muhammad.
Thank you very much.
For being on our broadcast today. This is going to be available over the internet on multiple internet stations, along on a CBS affiliate here in Milwaukee. But Focus on Diversity is going international. And I would like to thank my audience here today for watching this broadcast, and wait for many, many more. God bless. You have a great day.